All right, welcome back to the Rollout. I'm Jeff Pratt, and joining me as always is Trent Henrich. How's it going, Trent?
I'm doing well. We're halfway through the season, right?
Yeah, we are halfway through the season, and unfortunately, we are without Jay this week due to some scheduling conflicts, but that's all right. Hopefully, we'll get him back or a couple of new guests potentially on over Thanksgiving break as both Trent and I head home for the holidays. But yeah, Jay did send us a couple of predictions that we'll get into as we go through these games, but let's just get right into it as we always do. Thursday night football. These are two extremely depleted teams, the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. The Packers are missing basically all of their running backs, and Aaron Jones is questionable to play, but if he does, you can't expect a normal workload for him. And then the 49ers, man, they're missing Jimmy G, Kittle, Ayuk, Kendrick Bourne's availability is up in the air now. Deebo Samuel, Kevin Coleman, Demetrius Flanagan. Like, they are missing pretty much everyone. But we know that despite that, this 49ers team has found ways to win, a large part because of the brilliance of Kyle Shanahan mastering this offensive team, despite them being down in so many aspects of the game. However, the Packers come in probably big favorites in this game because they've been able to show that they can get it done without Aaron Jones, who a lot of people are a little suspicious of what's exactly going on there with his calf injury. Because when it was initially reported a couple weeks ago, they said it was very minor, and now he's about to miss his second straight game. And people are wondering, are they sitting him out so he doesn't necessarily have that much leverage for contract extensions this offseason? Is he really hurt? Are they saving him for the playoffs? I'm not exactly sure. I think that it's probably the last one, and they're just trying to make sure he's completely healthy for a deep playoff run. But who knows? Trent, let's get into this matchup. Who are you taking between Green Bay and San Francisco?
Yeah, I'm gonna roll with Green Bay here. I think San Francisco is just missing too much this week. They're not a bad team, and you're right. They have proven that they can play while missing players and win games. So have the Packers, though. I don't know if you remember there was a point in time when Devontae Adams was out for a couple of games, and it did not matter who Rodgers was throwing to, he made it happen. Lazard came up big those games, and I mean Rodgers has his weapons other than his running backs this week. Green Bay is just going to throw the ball a lot. The Niners have a good run defense too, so it would have been a tougher time anyways if Aaron Jones does play or is playing. But I think Green Bay is too much for this depleted San Francisco offense and defense. Even though San Francisco's home, I'm going to go with Green Bay Thursday night.
Yeah, I agree with you, Trent. I'm going to take the Packers here as well. And pretty much for the key reason you stated in there, and that is Devontae Adams is suiting up. And in the last two games when he's played, he has been absolutely unstoppable. And Aaron Rodgers, we know, as you said, Trent, that this 49ers defense, it's built around their run defense. Even with Nick Bosa and Solomon Thomas out for the year, they've been pretty solid against the run, and they haven't been great against the pass this year. That's how you've been able to beat the 49ers. And when you have a guy like Devontae Adams, who is probably the best route runner in the NFL and one of the best route runners in NFL history, I remember watching a video of him making Chad Ochocinco cry because of how beautiful his routes were. But when you have a guy that talented lining up against a beat up defense and a beat up team, as you said, Trent, I think they're just going to throw the ball a lot early and often, look to get Adams going, and they have other weapons in this offense too. Marquez Valdez-Scantling is not to be taken for granted. Robert Tonyan has shown that he can play well, and I know your guy, Jay Sternberg, he shows up every once in a while. So yeah, I just think that this Packers offense is going to overwhelm the 49ers. So both of us are going to take Green Bay there. Moving on, we have the Houston Texans taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are going to be without your guy, the stash, Gardner Minshew. And I'm just going to say it, Trent. I'm not so sure he's ever going to get a start for the Jaguars again this year. We'll see what happens when he comes back, but they seem pretty high on their guy Luton, and we know that they're tanking at this point to get a better pick. And then as for the Texans, they're coming in surprisingly having everyone still on their core. We expected them to be pretty active sellers at the trade deadline, especially Will Fuller, who we know they and the Packers had serious talks all the way up until the deadline, and the deal couldn't get done because Houston wanted a second round pick, and Green Bay wasn't willing to give it up for a guy who's going to need to get a new deal this offseason. So The Texans are coming in with all of their weapons against a Jacksonville Jaguars team who's beat up without their starting quarterback. And pretty much the only guy who's really shined on their team so far this year is James Robinson. Trent, I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking?
Yeah, Jacksonville not having the stash is a real deal breaker for me. That's my guy, and I think you're right. I don't know if he's going to come back this season. I hope that the Jets do get the first pick, so they take Trevor Lawrence and Gardner Minshew will get another chance next season. He didn't look bad the first couple of games. Jacksonville couldn't grind out a couple wins, but they beat the Colts early on. The Colts are really a solid team this year. I still think Minshew's got some talent, and I hope he gets another chance this coming season. Having said that, yeah, Houston is going to win this game. I like Houston a lot. Deshaun Watson gets a good shot at a pretty poor defense. Jacksonville moved a lot of their best guys in the offseason. I will say, like you said, expect James Robinson to get a ton of touches here on out. This guy's going to rack up some serious numbers. He already has, and now his starting quarterback is gone. It's going to be the James Robinson show in Jacksonville, and this guy could be legit in years to come. But take Houston. I like them here.
Yeah, Trent, as you said, we talked about this earlier, but man, James Robinson has made the Jaguars look like absolute geniuses for cutting Fournette earlier this season. I know when they did that, a lot of people were shocked, honestly, because we hadn't seen Robinson up till that point, and it looked like they were just doing that to embrace the tank. And he has come out and simply been one of the best running backs in football from a statistical standpoint. So I do think, as you see, he's going to get a lot of touches, but I'm taking the Texans here too. Their offense is just way too good for the Jaguars to keep up with at this point. I'm looking forward to seeing David Johnson go to work. He has quietly been one of the most efficient and, how do I say this, safest running backs in fantasy football this year. He hasn't gone over 20 PPR points in a game, but he's only dipped below 10 once. So we know he has a really solid floor. He's solid in the receiving game for Houston, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they utilize him, especially moving forward, as well as Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, who it's good to see both of those guys stay healthy up until this point. So we're both taking Houston there. Moving on. We have another battle of the NFC least, the New York Giants taking on the Washington football team. And Trent, I will say this, the Giants surprised a lot of people on Monday Night Football against the Buccaneers. They had a chance to win that game. And, if Daniel Jones could just learn to release the ball a little earlier, I know that there was that really bad pass interference scandal there. In my opinion, I think both of us think it wasn't PI. I think that it was pretty much a split decision hit, and the referees got that one right. But we wouldn't be having this conversation if Daniel Jones could learn to get the ball out a little bit earlier instead of hesitating. Deion Lewis was wide open for a good 2 seconds there, and he hesitated, and that's why they lost the game. All that being said, who are you taking?
Yeah, just to touch on that PI call, I think that the call, the outcome was correct, but I'm not sure once you throw that flag, you're in a spot to pick it up. I think originally it should have been a no call, and there would have been no questions about it. The fact that they threw the flag and then picked it up, I'm not too sure about that because I'm not sold on that one. But the Giants did look good, and they should have beaten the Eagles, and they put up a fight against the Bucs on Monday night. Their defense is surprisingly good. After watching that game against the Bucs, they did a really good job. The question mark for me on the Giants team is their offense, specifically some effort, because I don't know if you remember when they were playing the Eagles, Evan Ingram, he had a wide open catch to seal the game, and he wouldn't run and get it. He did that differently last week, and he made the catch against the Bucs. But some of these guys seem to just not have that will to win at this point. Sterling Shepard may be out this week, so I just have my doubts with the offense. I think the defense is good enough to get them a win this week against Washington, so I'm gonna go with the Giants. But realistically, the Giants could be a 3-win team right now and pretty close to the top of the NFC East, and they still have a chance because they're in the worst division in football. So I'm gonna go with the Giants. I'm gonna give them a shot this week, and I hope they can pull out the win.
Yeah, I think you touched on that perfectly, Trent. I'm going to take the Giants too. I'll be brief here, pretty much for the reasons you said. I think their defense is good enough to get them a win this week, and they have enough weapons in this offense. Even if Sterling Shepard is out, if Evan Engram and Darius Slayton and Devontae Freeman, if he's going to be back, or even Wayne Gallman, who looked pretty solid against the Bucks, if they just show up and try to play good football, they can beat this Washington team. Although it's not a given, because we've seen Washington come out and just steamroll a couple of teams in weird matchups. So I think that this one is kind of a toss-up. I'm taking the Giants. And for New York moving forward, this is a pivotal time right now when you need to decide if Daniel Jones is going to be your quarterback of the future, because he had a couple moments against the Bucks where he looked great, specifically on that deep ball to Golden Tate to get them back into the game, and really set them up to go to overtime. Which unfortunately, because of Daniel Jones, they weren't able to convert. Look, then again, he had Darius Slayton open 3 or 4 times on deep ball. Not just him, Sterling Shepard, Evan Engram. And he repeatedly showed that he does not have the continuous touch on the deep ball to find guys. And in this Giants offense, you need to be able to get big hitters if you're going to stay in games, because you're just not going to grind away at teams like other teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are, where Tom Brady, he's going to kill you on 10 or 12 10-yard passes down the stretch in drive. Daniel Jones in this Giants offense, I just don't think they can do that. I'm interested to see how he does for the rest of the season. I'm taking the Giants in this one as well, Trent. So we are 3 for 3 in terms of picking the same teams here. Moving on, I'm not really expecting it to change, although this one team made a pretty big stand last week. It is the Indianapolis Colts, who looked really good against the Detroit Lions, taking on the Baltimore Ravens, who, despite the poor play of Lamar Jackson, are still finding ways to be a good football team. Obviously, I'd say Lamar cost them that game against the Steelers last week. He really was not good. I know Marquise Brown tweeted out after the game, what's the point of having soldiers if you're not going to use them? Or I'm paraphrasing pretty much, because he looked his way once and it was for a touchdown. And then he barely looked at Mark Andrews again. So Lamar has not looked himself so far this year, even running the ball. He's just not been nearly as effective as he was during his MVP campaign. Who are you taking in this one, Trent?
Yeah, I still not sold on this Colts team. They're one of the most confusing teams for me. They come out week 1, you lose to Jacksonville. They go down big to the Bengals. And then last week, they just blow their opponent out of the water. They're just really, I can't get a grasp on them. I have a lot more faith in this Baltimore team. Yes, they might have lost to Pittsburgh last week, but Pittsburgh's undefeated for a reason. They have a really good offense and defense. They're probably, at this point, the most well-rounded team in the NFL. And I still think Lamar Jackson's good. He hasn't found his stride this season, but this Colts defense is decent. I honestly could see Baltimore absolutely blowing them out of the water. This Colts team, I think once they go down early and they get in a hole, they don't climb out of it. Baltimore is the same way, though. I think whoever jumps out on this game quickly, whoever gets a first score or two, could just put the other team in almost depression, and they won't come out of it. I'm going to go with Baltimore at Indianapolis this week. I really don't know. I like Baltimore a lot more, and I don't have a good sense of Indianapolis. Even halfway through the season, I'm going to roll with Baltimore.
Yeah, I'm rolling with the Ravens too here, Trent. I agree with you. I think that this Colts team is still a pretender, and I know a lot of people are going to view their win over Detroit as a statement win. I think it's more of a statement loss for where the Lions are right now, because they were coming off a couple of good performances, and people were thinking, hey, this team might have a chance to push for the playoffs finally with all the talent they have on their roster. But guess what? They're going to be without their star receiver, Kenny Golladay, for a couple of weeks, most likely. I know he's going to be out for this week at least. And I think – wait, no, this is the Colts. I was talking about the Lions. Jesus. When we get to the Lions, they'll be without Kenny Golladay. We'll get there. But the Colts, T.Y. Hilton, speaking of receivers, he's dealing with a groin injury right now. His availability is up in the air. And then the Ravens, they just have so many weapons. Mark Ingram being out has actually allowed J.K. Dobbins to finally emerge in this Ravens offense. And yes, they played one of the toughest run defenses in the league last week against Pittsburgh, but Dobbins looked great. He took 15 carries for 113 yards, and that's something that I would love to see him build on. And hopefully John Harbaugh realizes this and doesn't just go back to giving Mark Ingram the bulk of the touches when he gets back in the offense. He's over 30. He's a running back. You should want to save him for the playoffs because he still can be effective. But I don't think you should be giving more than 7 or carries a game. And I think Dobbins, he's a fresh rookie. He's shown that he's capable of handling a large workload. I think that he should be the one handling the bulk of the touches. Then obviously Gus Edwards is still in that offense. He's playing a pretty big role and he's doing pretty well too. So he's kind of the wild card there. Take the Ravens in this one. Trent, I agree with you. I just think that top to bottom, they're a better football team than the Colts. Yeah, moving on. Now I know why I was talking about Kenny Golladay, because the next game we're talking about is the Detroit Lions taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Lions coming off a loss, Vikings coming off a pretty big statement win. And yeah, I don't know. They're going to be without Kenny Golladay. Detroit is, I'm not sure if they can get it done. Marvin Jones stepped up in Galladay's absence last week, which is good to see because we know that he can be a really capable receiver. Trent, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, I mean, I like that Lions team going into last week, and they just got steamrolled. And I thought the Packers were going to beat Minnesota, and Minnesota topped the Packers. So I didn't see these two teams clearly last week. The one thing you can't deny is Dalvin Cook is a dominant running back. Guy had 4 touchdowns, 32 touches last week. I mean, he was the guy. I mean, he is the guy still in that Minnesota offense. And honestly, who I think the guy is in Detroit, being Kenny Golladay is out, I'm just going to go with the team that has the more powerful weapon. I'm going to go with the Vikings. And I don't really like the Vikings because I'm not a fan of Kirk Cousins. But Dalvin Cook doesn't need Kirk Cousins to run the ball. So I'm going to go with basically Dalvin Cook and the Vikings at home. I think at home would be nice for Minnesota. And hopefully Dalvin Cook gets, maybe 3 touchdowns. Who knows?
Yeah, the thing about the Lions for me is a lot of people were touting that their run defense had improved a lot heading into last game against the Colts, and that was true. Statistically, they started off really bad and they were getting better. And then Jonathan Taylor is dealing with an ankle injury, and they just allowed Nyheim Hines and running back Jordan Wilkins to come out of nowhere and steamroll them. And if I'm Dalvin Cook, I'm looking at those results and just salivating over a potential matchup this week, as you were saying, Trent. And I do think that some of this game is going to fall on Kirk Cousins because we've seen at times it looks like he doesn't know how to throw the ball. And then he'll come out a week after that and he looks stellar, like the quarterback he was in Washington. And when he does play well, it's great because he utilizes his weapons, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson, who, when targeted, are one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. But all that falls on Kirk Cousins. I do think Minnesota is going to be looking for a new quarterback this offseason if they drop far enough in the draft. Probably not on Trevor Lawrence reigns, but Justin Fields is definitely an enticing option for them. All that being said, I'm taking the Vikings here too. I just think that they're going to overwhelm the Lions on the ground. And if Kirk Cousins is able to come out and just put together a decent showing through the air, they're going to win this game by a pretty large margin, in my opinion. All right, Trent. So we're through a couple of weeks now, and we have not picked, and not even an upset, I guess, or maybe an upset, but we just haven't picked differently yet. I think that might change with this next matchup. We have the Tennessee Titans taking on the Chicago Bears. And by your nod, I think that this is going to change. I'll throw it to you. Who are you taking?
I finally got the Bears right last week. I've broken the Chicago curse.
See, you're just going to go back to getting them wrong. This is your 1 week.
No, Tennessee's at home. Still believe in their offense. Derrick Henry is the most unstoppable force. He's more unstoppable than Dalvin Cook, in my opinion. He is just a freak specimen of a human being. I was surprised last week how good Corey Davis played. He looked really good in that offense. And Ryan Tannehill, we don't like him, but he's pretty good. He's been playing pretty good. A.J. Brown looks good. The offense is good. The defense could use some work. Chicago's defense will give Tennessee some problems, don't get me wrong. Tennessee's got a good home crowd, though. When they play home, they get some noise in that stadium. I think it is a factor in COVID because not all stadiums you play in have many fans. So I'm going to go with Tennessee at home. Chicago is a pretender. Chicago is not a legitimate football team. Don't know how they beat the Bucs still. I think that game should be under investigation for, I don't know, some fraudulent actions. I have no idea, but I'm going to roll with Tennessee here.
You sound like a current incumbent in the presidential election with those comments there. But I just have to disagree with you, Trent. I think that you can't look at – I understand why people say that Chicago's a pretender because their offense is lackluster, but they came out and they played very well against the Saints. And I know that game was far too close to comfort for you watching that one go down to the wire. And I really wish it went into OT because I think that Chicago is going to be able to pull it out.
It
But
did.
it. Oh wait, no OT. What am I thinking about?
Bears didn't score.
Yeah, Bears didn't score. Oh, that's right. I'm thinking about a different matchup. That's unfortunate. But yeah, I really wish that Chicago was able to pull it out. My apologies. And man, I just think that you look at their offense and Nick Foles, he put any doubt to rest that he's the guy in Chicago because he came out after a couple of questionable performances and did play well against the Saints. And then Mitch Trubisky played one snap and he got hurt. So that pretty much sums up his career in Chicago. The Bears will be moving on from him this offseason, to say the least. And Nick Foles is their guy, at least for the rest of the year. And I like their chances against this Tennessee team that's really stumbling right now. A lot of people, including both of us, were expecting them to come out and really bounce back in a strong fashion against the Bengals, who have been one of my favorite teams to watch this year. And they didn't have Joe Mixon, Cincinnati, and they still came out and they crushed Tennessee. And Tennessee, they tried to get back in it late, but Cincinnati just overwhelmed them. And I don't know. I just can't trust this Tennessee team. I understand your point about Derrick Henry being the most unstoppable running back in the NFL, and I agree with it. But if there's a team that's going to at least contain him, it's the Chicago run defense. And I'm not sure Tannehill has shown that he can throw to beat teams. Corey Davis, though, I'll give you that. He is one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL. The man, from a fantasy perspective, I know, and he's averaging 16.8 fantasy points per game. So every time he has played, he's been extremely effective, and it does somewhat cap A.J. Brown's upside from a fantasy perspective. But, it's definitely good for Tennessee from a pure football standpoint and their offense to have another weapon, especially since Jonnu Smith hasn't been playing up to expectations as of late. But yeah, I just think that the Bears, despite that loss, they're feeling good going into this week. And Tennessee, there's a sense of desperation, and I'm not sure that they're going to be able to pull it off. I think this is going to be a good game. Could definitely go either way. So that is the first matchup, which we disagree, as I predicted it was going to happen. I think we'll get back to being on the same page here as the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Carolina Panthers, who will have, in my opinion, the best running back in the NFL, Christian McCaffrey, back finally off of IR this week. We know he's fully healthy, ready to go, and hopefully that can unlock an entirely new dimension in Carolina's offense, because we saw Teddy Bridgewater has struggled over the last couple of weeks, and bringing back CMC is going to be huge for them. However, in my opinion, I don't think it's enough to put them over the defending Super Bowl champs. These are games where, as Kansas City, in the expanded playoff format, you need to win if you want to get the number one seed, especially with Pittsburgh being undefeated. As you said, Trent, you cannot afford to drop any games right now. So I'm not sure I'm going to pick against Kansas City in any matchup moving forward, because they know they need to get that number one seed, or they don't have to, but it would definitely be nice. And that they're pushing for it. So I'm going to take the Chiefs. Just to sum it up quickly, Trent, who are you rolling with?
Yeah, as long as Pat Mahomes is at quarterback, it doesn't matter who Kansas City's playing. I will be picking Kansas City. You can put it in Sharpie right now. Every week, I'm going with Kansas City unless they're sitting Pat Mahomes. I will say it's going to be great for Carolina to have Christian McCaffrey back. Mike Davis did a good job filling in. He kind of fell off the last week or two. Wasn't playing up to the standards he was before. And I agree. CMC is probably the most talented. He is the most talented running back in the NFL. I think that Derrick Henry is harder to stop, but skill-wise, it's Christian McCaffrey all day long. I like Kansas City in this matchup because they're at home and it's Kansas City, and I have no doubts for this team. I picked them to win a Super Bowl, and I'm going to stick with that. So, yeah, I'll pick Kansas City, and it may be closer than we think. It could be like 10 points, something around there. I'm going to go with Kansas City, though.
All right, sounds good. We both take the Chiefs there, and we have another solid matchup heading into this next week. Two divisional titans, the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Buffalo Bills, who are firmly atop the AFC East at this point after a heartbreaking loss for the New England Patriots against them. Why are you looking at me like that?
I don't think they're firmly atop. I think the Dolphins still got a great chance to win this. I don't know what you're.
I'm just saying they're currently firmly atop. They're atop by a couple of games.
What are they? 5 and something?
I'll look at it. But I'm pretty sure they have at least 2 games on the Dolphins.
I think my Dolphins.
No, 6-2 and 4-3. So they have 2 games on them.
Yeah, but look at the schedule.
One loss. I understand, and I do think that the Bills hopefully are going to start to lose some of these games. They should have dropped last week's matchup to the Patriots. Cam Newton just fumbled the ball, man. There's not much else you can say about that. That sums up the Patriots season so far, and we'll get to them later with the last matchup of our predictions. But right now, we're talking about the Buffalo Bills, and I'll start things off here. Man, you know what, Trent? Both you and I was on it early. You hopped on late. We're on the Josh Allen Express. He's looked god awful. I think I'm off. I think I'm hopping off now. And I was fortunately able to unload him in most of my fantasy teams this year. As you look ahead to his playoff schedule, and it is not any easier. This man had not scored over 18 fantasy points in his last 4 matchups. I don't see that trend changing this week against the Seattle Seahawks. Actually, no, I take that back. This is the week I do see it changing, but I don't see him continuing that after this week because we know Seattle's secondary is extremely vulnerable. So if there's a week that you're going to start Josh Allen in fantasy, it is this one, but I would still look to unload him after this performance, assuming he plays well, because the future matchups just aren't enticing. That being said, I'm taking the Seahawks in this one because I think that top to bottom, they're a much better football team. Hard to pick against the current MVP favorite, Russell Wilson, although I've done it once so far this year, and I was correct throwing it back to the Cardinals game. Besides, I know still a little mad about that one, but yeah, I think the Seattle's going to come out. Chris Carson is unlikely to play at this point. I know he's questionable. He's going to test out his foot tomorrow to see what's up with it. But even if he's out, DJ Dallas showed that he was able to step in and just carry the workload and be a good option for them. And then, in my opinion, the Seahawks have the best wide receiver duo in the NFL right now in Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, who seem to just be taking turns going off in games. So I'm taking the Seahawks. Trent, I'll throw it to you, although I'm expecting a pretty similar prediction.
Yeah, I've been on the Seahawks train since day one. Luckily, I was on the Josh Allen caboose, and I could just get off. You were conducting that train, so that train, if you got off the train, it's crashed. Like it's
Yeah,
done
I
for.
think I abandoned the train. It's currently heading off a cliff right now.
I guess so because you've abandoned ship. But I am still on the Russell Wilson for MVP train. I've been leading that one since day one. I freaking love Russell Wilson. This Seattle team, I think, is actually going to shred Buffalo. At Buffalo, I think the Seahawks team could come out and just blow them out of the water. Buffalo has not looked great the last couple weeks. Think about the teams they played against. They barely beat the Pats. They barely beat the Jets. And even as a Pats fan, I know this Pats team is not legit. It's not. Seattle, they're going to blow out Buffalo. I'm calling that, and I'm taking Seattle to the bank.
Sounds good. I would love to see it, and I'm expecting a pretty similar prediction there. All right. Moving on, we have the Denver Broncos taking on the team that has haunted us throughout our predictions the most this year, especially early on, and especially Trent at this point, who's made a couple of bold claims about them. We have Denver taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And if you look at the Falcons, they're coming off a pretty big win over the Panthers last week. They dropped heartbreaker to Detroit, but then the week before that, they dominated Minnesota. So they're coming off of 3 straight weeks where they probably should have had 3 straight wins. Right now, Matt Ryan has looked better. Julio Jones has reclaimed his spot among the top 3 receivers in the league, in my opinion. Calvin Ridley is still a monster. So this is probably the duo that could challenge Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf as the best wide receiver duo in the NFL. And I think that, you may actually have to give the edge to them, at least from a pure talent standpoint. Although DK has a lot to say about that, I'm sure. Trent, who are you taking in this one?
This is an interesting game because the Chargers should have won last week. It's not like a thought. They had the game. They were up like 21 points. That was silly that they dropped that game. Props to Drew Lock and that offense coming back and getting that last-second touchdown to win the game. Having said that, I don't like Atlanta. I don't like Denver, but I have to pick a team. Atlanta's home. I'm going to go Atlanta here. For whatever reason, I think I dislike Denver more than Atlanta. I think Atlanta's offense has more potential if they decide to show up or not. Atlanta's defense is pretty poor. I just think maybe Atlanta can just outdo Denver on the offensive side of the ball. So I'll go with Atlanta. They're at home, and I don't like this matchup I just don't like this matchup in general.
Yeah, I don't either. And I'm not sure that this is a game I'm going to be watching a whole lot of unless to see Julio Jones, who is on a fair amount of my fantasy teams. I'm taking the Falcons here as well. I just think that this offense is a little too high powered for the Broncos to keep up with. We know that one thing that a lot of people were expecting was Drew Lock was going to come out and this was going to be a huge statement year for him. Hasn't been the case so far this year. He has just like looked like an average quarterback in my mind, and that's not a bad thing. Like he still has potential. Denver and John Elway, who fingers crossed, he has COVID right now, so we hope for a speedy recovery for him. We hope that they found their franchise quarterback in Drew Lock. I'm not sure it's a lock yet that is the case, but yes, very punny there. But I'm going to take the Falcons in this one. I just think that they're much more high octane than the Broncos and Denver. They still are trying to figure out what's going on with Melvin Gordon and Philip Lindsay. Lindsay has looked better than Gordon over the last 2 weeks. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on if you're a fantasy owner for either of those two guys. Jerry Jeudy, every week it looks like he's set up to have a monster game, and then he's just not able to get it done. I still think he has all the potential in the world, but I'm not exactly sure when that breakout is going to come. I think he is a tremendous receiver, and I hope the best for him. But all that being said, I'm taking the Falcons this week. Moving on, we have Trent, the team, as you mentioned, that blew a huge lead to Denver last week, the LA Chargers, who, man, they just cannot win these close games. And it's absolutely brutal watching them choke because I don't know about you, but personally, I'm a huge fan of Justin Herbert. I've been on that bandwagon for a while, just as you've been on the bandwagon with, let's say, the Seahawks and Russell Wilson for MVP. I've probably been as early on the bandwagon with Herbert, or even before he was drafted. He was a guy that I wanted the Patriots to target. But no, the Chargers got lucky. They took the hometown kid, and he's looked phenomenal for them despite not being able to get the results. They are taking on a Las Vegas Raiders team that is much better than anyone was expecting them to be this year. They're currently 4-3, only behind the Chiefs in the AFC West. And they still have a pretty solid chance to make the playoffs at this point. Derek Carr has answered the questions and not shut down the doubters, but he's quieted them, to say the least. And he looks pretty good. Josh Jacobs had a good bounce back performance last week from a pure football standpoint, rushed over 100 yards. I'm going to take the Raiders in this one. I just think that their football team, they're more mentally tough at this point than the Chargers, and they're older. They have a lot more veterans on their team. The one thing that you can fault about the Raiders is they don't have a clear number one receiver, but Darren Waller pretty much takes over that role every single week. And they have guys like Hunter Renfrow, who is an elite route runner, and I think that's not talked about enough. And then Henry Ruggs, who is a receiver who is a really big play threat, has Tyreek Hill-esque potential, in my opinion. And then Nelson Aguilar seems to catch a touchdown every couple of games, so he's involved in that offense. And then Bryan Edwards, when healthy, is good as well. So they have a decent core. And I think on the ground, they're just going to pummel this beat up Denver defense. I'm rolling with the Raiders here. Trent, what about you?
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup because I feel like the Chargers, I mean, they're not similar team to Atlanta, but they've had similar outcomes where they should have won all these games and they just haven't. And the Las Vegas Raiders are an interesting team because they quietly have been winning games. They've put up some, they've given good competition to some good teams. I think this is just a good matchup for Vegas in the sense that their defense should shut down a young quarterback in Justin Herbert, in my opinion. I think that Josh Jacobs should run the ball quite a bit in this game. I'm going to go with Las Vegas at the Chargers. I wouldn't be surprised if the Chargers get a lead like they usually do, though. Don't get too nervous. I think they might blow it. That's my prediction. I guess I'm going to go with Vegas in a close one.
Fair enough. We both take the Raiders there. Moving on, we have a game that I believe has a lot of potential to be one of the games of the week. It is the Arizona Cardinals taking on Trent's Miami Dolphins, who looked absolutely stellar last week against Jared Goff, made him look absolutely stupid on a variety of plays. Their defense won them that football game. Tua didn't have to do much in his debut, but he got enough done. Found Devontae Parker for a touchdown, and the Miami Dolphins were able to cruise to victory there. I don't think they're going to have that easy of a task this week against a Cardinals team that has looked really solid at points this year. Kyler Murray. Trent, I know that you're not especially high on him, but I think that he is a phenomenal young talent in this league. He hasn't had to throw the ball as much this year as we were expecting, but when he does, I like what he's been able to do. He's got one of the best receiving cores in the league to work with. Chase Edmonds, we're finally going to get to see take over the starting role for Arizona this week. And I think that's going to be huge because he's been extremely productive on about 1/3 of the touches that Kenyon Drake was getting up to this point. So I know that a lot of people, including myself, are excited to see what Edmonds is able to do this week. But the Dolphins, this is going to be a tough game for Arizona to pull out. Trent, who are you taking?
Yeah, this is a weird one for me as well. Uh, I still don't like Tua at quarterback, and I wish Fitzmagic was never replaced. I mean, yes, they got the win last week, but to be quite honest, it was Miami's defense that got the win last week. It was not Tua. Tua didn't even have 100 yards, I don't think. Like,
He had
and
93 on 12 for 22 passes, I believe.
yeah, I mean, and I think he may have had a fumble or a pick in there too. I think he did have one turnover. He had maybe a touchdown. Oh man, it's tough. This really is a tough game for me because Arizona's defense is not great. They've had Buda Baker and a couple guys, like individuals, have had good performances, but overall, I think this defense definitely has some holes for Arizona. If Fitzmagic was starting at quarterback, I would pick Miami. Did you take your pick yet, Jeff?
I didn't take my pick. No, not yet.
I I am gonna go with whatever team you don't pick to pick differently. I am totally indifferent on this game. Uh, I was leaning Arizona until today, and now it's just like I want to see the Dolphins succeed. I want them to see them in the AFC East. So either way, I don't know who to pick. I'll just go wherever you don't go, Jeff.
All right, sir. So you'll be going with the Dolphins then, because I'm taking the Cardinals in this one. I'm with you. I think this is going to be a tough matchup, but this is a game for Arizona that they need to win if they're going to remain in the playoff hunt. This is a big one. This is a statement win for them to show that they can handle this Dolphins defense, which is not something I thought I'd ever be saying this year, that a team would have to prove they'd be able to handle this Dolphins defense. But credit to Miami, they went out this offseason and Trent, as you were saying earlier when we had a conversation, they did everything they needed to do defensively in terms of free agency and the draft to put themselves in a stellar position moving forward for this year and the future. But all that being said, I'm taking the Cardinals. I just think that they're a better football team, top to bottom, than Miami, although I think it's going to be a close one.
So let me make my argument for Miami now then, because it looks like I'm going with Miami. I will say that I think last week it was important for this week because Tua might have got his first game jitters out. I don't think he would do everything he would normally do as a quarterback in his first game just because you want to make sure you're not making any silly mistakes. You're just trying to play it safe. I think we could see Tua move a lot more this week. Should see more than 22 pass attempts for sure this week, especially against this Arizona defense that is susceptible to the passing game. And something to note, which is why I really didn't want to take Miami, but I'm going to, is that Myles Gaskin is out this week. That was reported this morning. I think that does hurt this team a lot because he's played really well, but that just gives more reason for Tua to have to run the ball himself and to throw the ball more. I'm going to go with Tua. He got the first game jitters out, and the defense is going to hold Arizona to under, let's say, 24 points.
Yeah, that's something that I completely forgot to mention. But not only is Myles Gaskin out, he's on IR. So he's out for the next 3 weeks. And Matt Breida is dealing with a hamstring injury himself, and he was in line to step up and take touches. So they're going to be relying on guys like Jordan Howard, who has been a healthy scratch for the last couple of games, and Patrick Laird. So I'm not exactly sure how effective both of those guys are going to be. Hopefully Matt Breida is still able to suit up. That is unclear at this point, although he didn't practice this morning, which is Thursday, by the way. But all that being said, yeah, I think the Cardinals are going to take this game, but I do think that Tua bounces back. I think that part of the reason for his struggles, quote unquote, is just because he didn't have to do much to win that game. And now he's going to have to beat this Cardinals team. So I'm expecting a better game for him. I'm not worried at all for Tua's prospects for the future. I know that heading into the trade deadline, there were a bunch of teams saying, oh, let's trade Tua for like Deshaun Watson. And I was saying, like, first of all, I just don't know why the Texans would do that. But you don't give up on your franchise quarterback after you just drafted him, especially a guy like Tua has so much potential. So yeah, I think that the Cardinals are going to win, but I'm excited for Tua's future and the Dolphins' future for their franchise. All right, we're into our last 3 games of the week. We have one that we know the NFL was really looking forward to when they scheduled it in the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Dallas Cowboys. And now Dallas is going to be deciding between rolling out Cooper Rush and Garrett Gilbert at quarterback because the Ben DiNucci experiment is over in Dallas after one game full of sidearm throws where he appeared to be mimicking Patrick Mahomes the entire time, just with about 1% of the actual skill level. I'm taking the Steelers here. They're undefeated. That says everything I need to say. Trent, I'll kick it over to you.
You need no analyst or anything. You need nothing to tell you who's going to win this game. It's Pittsburgh. It may be by 1 million points. There is a good chance that they do surpass 1 million points in this game.
Yeah, Steelers fans, I'm sorry for not providing a lot of analysis on this one, but your team is just going to rock the Cowboys this week. Moving on, we have, in my opinion, the game of the week. Game of the week in week 1, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the New Orleans Saints. This will be Antonio Brown's debut for the Bucs, and we know what happened last time he had a debut with Tom Brady. He was extremely effective. Now, obviously, he's been out of the league for quite some time, but Bruce Arians has said that he has looked fantastic in workouts. He seems to be buying into the team first mentality so far. Whether that remains is yet to be seen because Antonio Brown is about as wild of a wild card as you can get in the NFL. But as long as he suits up, man, he is still one of the best receivers in the NFL. And when it's all said and done, will be one of the best receivers in NFL history. All that being said, who are you taking in this game, Trent?
I'm going to go with Tampa here. They just look like the better team, in my opinion. I know they didn't have a great week last week, but AB, I think, will be a factor. The ball is going to get spread around even more, which may not make guys too happy. And it's been expressed to AB that he cannot expect a huge workload in this offense because it's unrealistic with all the weapons Brady has. And he likes to spread it out to guys. I'm going to go with Tampa. And I think New Orleans, they've had some injuries. I don't think they're at full health still. Michael Thomas has not looked the same. Going to go with the Bucs at home, and with this win, they'd probably take a commanding lead in their division.
Yeah, I'm going to roll with the Bucs here too, Trent. Both of us took the Saints in week 1, and the Saints won pretty dominantly. And I still think that there's a chance because, New Orleans has a guy named Michael Thomas coming back who set the single-season reception record last year, and he looks like he is primed to return this week. And they also have Alvin Kamara, who Bruce Arians said earlier this week. He said, hey, I coached Marshall Faulk. This guy is more dangerous than Marshall Faulk. So that is about as high of a compliment as you can receive when talking about all-time running backs. And I think that, Alvin Kamara, we know that he's supremely talented. He's basically a slot receiver playing running back at this point. And he's just deadly, period. All that being said, I think this Bucs team, they're less banged up. Oh, I say that with them, the potential of them having Chris Godwin out this game. But Michael Thomas, he hasn't played a game in weeks at this point. So we don't know if he comes back, which isn't a guarantee at this point, if he's going to be rusty or not. Alvin Kamara is their entire offense at this point. And, if the Bucs, who have been really good against the run so far this year, are able to at least contain Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas doesn't play, I think that it has a chance of maybe nearing landslide territory at this point. But if Michael Thomas does suit up, I think it's going to be a shootout. And in this one, I think it favors Tom Brady because he has been the better quarterback than Drew Brees this year. All right. We both take the Bucs in that one, and we are heading into the final prediction. Yes, Trent, you have something else to say?
Jay said he's also taking the Bucs.
Jay said he's taking the Bucs, and did he say they're the best team in the NFL or the NFC?
I would say the NFC just in case. We'll say the NFC.
Yes, Jay's taking the Bucs. Actually, why don't we go in to see what Jay said at this point? He said he wants to say the Bucs are the best team in the NFC, and moving into this week, into our last prediction, he is taking the Patriots against the Jets. I am also taking the Patriots against the Jets just because At this point, it's must-win territory for New England. It was must-win last week for them, really. But, technically they're not eliminated from the playoffs at this point. I think that none of us are really expecting them to make a playoff push. It would take an unreal hot streak that I'm just not sure this team has in them. Although who knows? Bill Belichick has surprised us before. The Patriots have done it. Maybe they'll do it again. Who's us to say? We can never count Bill Belichick out. That is one thing I can firmly say with confidence. All that being said, I'm taking the Patriots in this one just because the Jets are the worst team in the NFL. Period. Trent, I'll throw it to you.
I'm going to
No, my
no,
goodness.
here's the thing. I'm going to take New England. There is a scenario in my head that I'm not against, and that is New England. I don't think Belichick would ever do it. But throwing this game, losing the rest of them, and losing the last one of the Jets, which would put us in position to possibly get Trevor Lawrence. That's all I'm saying. I'm not against it. New England should win this game. They're banged up, but they still gave the Bills a run for their money, and they should have won that game if Newton didn't fumble it. I'm going to go with New England. I'm a Pats fan. I have to. Not against the tank move for Trevor, though.
Yeah, I am against the tank move for Trevor, and I think that Bill Belichick is too. And I think the moves that he made at the trade deadline, which turned out to be surprisingly active compared to every other team in the NFL, showed us that he's not ready to tank just yet. Because we know he could have moved Stephon Gilmore if he wanted to, but he had a really high asking price. It was a first-round pick and a player, and I don't blame other teams for not jumping on that opportunity at this point because Gilmore is on the wrong side of 30. At this point, he hasn't looked tremendous so far this year, and he's dealing with a minor knee injury, which is not great for a cornerback, to say the least. So I think that part of Bill's high asking price was knowing that no one was going to match it. So at least gives him an excuse to keep him until this offseason where he can again look to deal him instead of giving him an extension, which is what's going to end up happening. Then he brought in Isaiah Ford, receiver out of Miami, for literally nothing. It was a conditional 7th-round pick, and I like that move for the Patriots. Ford, he's a big slot receiver, got good hands. He's able to create separation. I've talked to a lot of Miami fans who say they actually liked him. I'm not saying he's going to come in and play a big role in this offense, but with the receiving core that New England has, he could absolutely be a contributor. At this point, it's just another body at this point that the Patriots needed, and I think that he has potential to really break out as a receiver because he didn't have the chance in Miami. He was playing behind guys like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, was behind Mike Gesicki as a receiving option. And yeah, all that being said, I think that the Patriots made a good move in bringing in him as a receiver. He's a young guy. If he plays well, they can bring him back again. He's a restricted free agent. It makes sense for Bill Belichick just to bring in another body. So that is going to wrap up our predictions for this week. Trent, we agreed on most of these predictions. I think we're going to be looking to the Bears mostly as the one to see what happens. I think that's going to be a really interesting matchup. A couple of good games this week. Unfortunately, we weren't able to bring Jay on. Hopefully, he'll be able to join us next week when we break down our Week 10 predictions. Everyone, enjoy the football this weekend. Stay safe. Have a good one.